So our mission is to promote organic practices to build an economically viable, ecologically sound, and socially just agricultural system in Vermont that benefits all living things. We would believe everyone has a role to play in creating more equitable and resilient food systems with joyful and vibrant agricultural communities at its heart. At NOFA, we build programs to serve as bridges from the world we have now towards the world we need. And our work, we certify the state's organic farms and food producers. We provide technical assistance, training, and education for farmers. We raise awareness around accessing and growing organic and local food. We advocate on the state and national levels for small and medium-scale farmers and farm workers. We offer a suite of food access programs, build community engagement programs, and lead farm-to-school connections. We travel the state, share meals, and build community with our NOFA mobile pizza oven. And of course, there's a lot more we do, and you can check out our website if you want to see some more, get more involved and view some other commitments that we've made. There's also a short video we'd like to show you. And of course, we want to give a huge thank you to our sponsors. They are also an integral part of our conference success and a huge ingredient for the growth of this movement. So to be sure to check them out on our website. And we want to give a special thank you to some of our cultivator, our nourishers, our nurturer. And we have Meadows Bee Farm, The Alchemist, City Market, Johnson Family Foundation, Lentil Hack Foundation, Forrest C. and Francis H. Latner Foundation, King Arthur Baking Company, Lawson's Finest Liquids, Stonyfield, Vermont Family Farms, Ben & Jerry's Foundation, High Mowing Organic Seeds, Johnny's Selected Seeds, Neighboring Food Co-op, Salvation Farms, Sun Common, Vermont Compost Company, Vermont Food Bank, Vermont Growers Association, Yankee Farm Credit, and our special media sponsor, 7 Days. And again, we hope you visit the website and there'll be more information on our sponsors there, so give them a big shout out. Again, you are all a special integral and an integral part of our success. And NOFA Vermont is a membership organization, and your membership adds power and voice to our movement. We hope if you're not already a member, you will join us today. And Bill's also putting links in the chat that you can follow to get some more information on memberships. So you can check that out. And before we get started, and you probably saw an email earlier this week with links, the different links to the access of the other workshops. And so we want to hold up also the workshop agreements that are also shared on the screen. And so please take a moment to review these. I just want to thank Julie and FM for joining us and taking this over, and I'm pretty excited to hear about it myself. I think that's all I have. Again, thanks all for coming, and I'll pass it on over.
Thanks, Bay. It's nice to see everyone here, and soon, one day, we'll be able to do it in person, hopefully. I'm Julie, and FM and I are excited to present to you. I'll let FM introduce himself in a minute, but we're excited to share with you our story about how we transitioned during COVID, and hear from you about how your experience has been and continues to be as we plan for what's coming next this season.
Awesome. So let me see if I can. Okay. So hi everyone. My name is FM, and I indeed do go by FM. It stands for Frank Michael, but I don't go by either. That's my father. I am I've had the pleasure of working alongside Julie for the past year at Red Wagon Plants, and actually our work began together in the context of transitioning the business at the very beginning of COVID. My work generally focuses in the area of sort of growth and business strategy, and my specific background is in specialty dairy here in Vermont. I spent the better part of the last decade working for Vermont Creamery as it scaled to become a national dairy brand. And today I am out on my own with a variety of both local to Vermont and national clients. And my passion, my heart has always been and will always be Vermont agriculture. So I'm thrilled to be here and to have been invited by NOFA to speak with you all and share some of my experience and our experience with you all. I'm a member of the Intervale Center's board of directors, and I'm just really honored to be able to sort of hold space and share this space with all of you, and really admire the work that you all do in our communities and for our land in Vermont. So thank you for giving us this opportunity. And Julie and I are really excited to share our experience, but at the same time, we're also very excited to hear from you. So we're going to do our best to create space for that, but also feel free to leverage the chat box and interject as questions arise throughout the presentation. We'll do our best to make this as personal and interactive as possible throughout the session. So thank you.
Yeah, I'm seeing a comment already in the chat that Gina can't see her screen. Maybe Bill, you could help Gina with that through the chat. Thanks. Great. So we're really excited to jump in. So, and I own Red Wagon plants. Oh, let's talk about I'll talk about Red Wagon and who I am in a second. So this is what we'll talk about today. We'll introduce ourselves a little more and what our pivot looked like, the lessons we've learned, what we're planning for this year and beyond. We'll share some results from a survey we took, a few resources, and if time allows, we'll break down into small groups so we can digest some of this information and have a conversation in a sort of easier to manage format, and then come back in the bigger group with some takeaways and reflections. So hopefully we can get through all of that. It's hard to always judge the pace of a Zoom workshop, so we're leaving it a little open-ended in terms of whether or not we'll have time for the breakout groups. But again, please feel free to ask questions in the chat box. We'll keep an eye on it while we're talking. So Red Wagon is an organic greenhouse business in Hinesburg. We have been there since 2005, and we've been open to the retail since 2000. For retail since 2006, we've had wholesale since the beginning, and we started the business in the Intervale. I started with my partner at the time, and we moved the farm from the Intervale to Starksboro, and then I moved the plant business to Hinesburg in 2005. So I've been doing the plant growing since actually 1996. So it's been quite a long time that I've been growing plants. And our business is made up of both retail and wholesale. We'll get into more details about that because it was really critical to our COVID strategy and how we were able to pivot. We also started a small herb farm. We grow about 1 acre of culinary herbs that we sell to area restaurants and grocery stores. We grow a few, we create some value added products with our herbs, which I'll get into. And then we also have a sort of educational arm of the business, and we do lots of garden education. We also do lots of community outreach and plant donations and do all kinds of work to support gardening in the community with schools and nonprofits. And then another sort of emerging sector of our business has been events, hospitality. We had a small cafe that was open on weekends when we could still be open to the public. And we've done parties and dinners and all kinds of pop-ups and things like that in the past, and hopefully we'll do again in the future. So our sales channels are very diverse, and that was part of what helped us navigate the COVID landscape as well as we did, because like I said, we have the retail, but we also have wholesale accounts, which range from grocery stores to hardware stores to nurseries, like other garden centers. We also sell to food hubs like Farmers to You, which sells into the Boston area, and the Interville Food Hub. And then we also sell to farms, like area farms that don't want to heat a greenhouse early in the season. They'll contract with us to grow some of their plants. That is what made us sort of deemed an essential business. So when COVID hit and there was that initial shutdown in the beginning, when none of us knew, what was going on, and the governor shut down so many businesses, the fact that we grow primarily food plants, excuse me, the fact that we grow, the bulk of what we grow is edible, that helped us be deemed an essential business so we could stay open. So part of our pivot was actually changing our lineup of plants on the fly. Literally, I canceled orders for a lot of cuttings of ornamental plants to make room for more edible plants because I knew, we just knew that people would be really, really doing a lot of vegetable gardening this year. And I was keeping an eye on what, certain, through social media or different connections, like what garden centers on the West Coast were doing, garden centers in Europe, and even hearing some from China. Some of the brokers we work with for plant cuttings were really good about keeping us up to date on, what was happening in countries where COVID, had already been happening for a while. So it was everywhere in the world that I was hearing about people were heading into the vegetable garden en masse, so we knew that that was the right way to go. I sent out this is how FM and I actually met. I sent out a newsletter, and I really relied on our newsletter quite a bit and really told customers, we're here for you. We know you want to be gardening this year. Don't worry, we haven't shut down. We're growing all the veggie plants you want. We don't know how to do e-commerce. If anyone out there knows how to help us, let us know. And FM wrote back the sweetest email saying, I am a marketing specialist. May I help you? I am a fan of your business. May I help you? I love to garden. May I help you? And it was like an angel coming down to the Red Wagon world and really helping us navigate what was difficult. It was a really difficult situation, and we were so incredibly lucky to be able to work with UFM and put together an online store and like work out all the kinks relatively quickly. So one takeaway is get help. If you can, get help, we spent a lot of time explaining what we were doing on social media and in our newsletter. And I would say, like, I worked hard to put out an air of, confidence and calm, and like the garden is where, you can recharge and where, the world makes sense. And I think it was genuine. I know it was genuine, but I think it worked. And I think it was a really helpful way to stay balanced during that really tumultuous time for a lot of people.
And I just note, Julie, that this newsletter, which really sort of formally announced that the transition that you and the team had committed to, came out on the 31st of March. And the slide that was 2 slides ago that didn't load properly had an image of the emergency declaration in Vermont, which you'll remember happened on the 13th of March. So it was really a 2-week, just about a 2-week turnaround to be sort of coming back and making these types of commitments to the customers to really help them through this moment of extreme uncertainty that we were also experiencing internally, but they were also feeling as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm just checking at the chat real quick. Okay, great. Yeah, so we had an FM, just jump in anytime too. I'm like a sort of locomotion when I get going, but cut me off and jump in because you have a lot to add, which I know a bunch of the slides coming are for you, but I'd love to hear your perspective throughout this too, or everyone would. But yeah, we kept 2 things at the forefront, which was keep everyone safe, who works at Red Wagon, make sure no one gets sick as a result of working at Red Wagon, and support the community and our customers with gardening. Those were the two, like every time I started to feel panicked, I just said, keep your eye on those two things. And that was like a mantra for everyone on our team. Everyone was freaked out. And I just kept repeating that to everybody. We were repeating it to each other. Those are the two things that matter. Nothing else matters. And we were really quick and decisive in saying we will not be open to the public, you know, and that was helpful. I think that made our team feel safe. That made our team feel taken care of. We really cashed in on a lot of goodwill this year, I gotta say. This is Janine, who's been a customer of ours, and she was a mentee for a long time, but now is more of a peer. She grows eggplants and has her own business. She grows these special African eggplants, but we have been working with all kinds of community groups for many, many years. And this year we told our customers, our retail customers, hey, let's all do this together. Can you chip in? And we started a little fund on our website that was called Grow It Forward. And customers were kicking in donations every time they placed an online order. And we were turning around and like donating a ton of plants and finding new ways to get plants out into the community. Like Janine would come and pick up trays and trays of onions and bring them back to New Farms for New Americans, or some of her friends who also have small market gardens. We were delivering plants in all kinds of ways, you know, to people that might not normally be able to purchase plants. So that was a really incredible way that the community came together, you know, and that we were able to really rally around that. And I think that's part of what made our pivot successful. I really do. Again, yeah, this is our crew this past year. Usually we take a big group picture, but we had to do the Brady Bunch style shot this year to be physically distant. But they really rallied. It was an amazing experience to go through this with them. And this is like just the basic breakdown of what the pivot looked like. We went from a Hinesburg retail greenhouse that's normally open to hundreds and hundreds of people every day to just e-commerce and home delivery. That was it. We did not allow any in-person shopping until much later, like in July, did we open up for in-person shopping. We were really clear that was all we were doing. And then our workshops all went to Zoom, and kits that people could buy and take home, and other things that we'll get into. And then initially my plan this last year was to cut back on wholesale and increase retail, but we switched gears really quickly and relied on all those wholesale stores that were also deemed essential businesses where we deliver our plants. So our sales to grocery stores and hardware stores were through the roof because they were some of the only stores that were open during gardening season in the early part of the season. And then all of our big plant sales and fundraisers that we normally do were all canceled. But really the weeks just evened out. Instead of having these huge events, we spread out the sales over a much longer, less, you know, peaks and valleys season, which was great. So yeah, this is just a shot of our retail shop on the left, what it normally looks like. And then it turned into a fulfillment center last year. And it was just boxes and boxes of people's orders that we picked every single morning. And we had orders would be in by midnight online, and then pickup would start at noon the next day. And it was next day pickup. That was the only option people could have, either home delivery within 1 to 3 days, or next day pickup. And then all our workshops went from in-person to online. So lessons learned. Do you want to start jumping in, FM?
Yeah, sure. So, you know, I think as I reflect on the time that we spent together this year and some of my other work with Vermont businesses, the one thing that really stands out is that we can't share a solution to the COVID challenge that will solve all manner of ills for you know, each individual business here in Vermont. And so it's been, but there are themes, and what we're trying to do today is to sort of distill down some of the themes and some of the learning that we've gained through our experience together that we feel like will be helpful as you all think about the ways in which you might continue your own COVID pivots, whether it's in your own business or if you're in a support role helping other agriculture-based businesses in Vermont. So we would reaffirm that, you know, for us early on, there wasn't even a real clear consensus within sort of the nursery and garden retail business landscape either. And we, you know, we're located in Hinesburg, and we're looking at businesses in Burlington and Colchester and in the surrounding communities, and nearly every single business took their own unique approach to sort of confronting the challenge and navigating that challenge. And so there wasn't a clear consensus or the right way to approach the challenge. And what we developed was unique to us, but we saw other big players in our space like Gardener Supply and Clausen's, and then other smaller businesses like us in and around Hinesburg. Everybody took a very different approach, and so we also want to affirm that there's no one size fits all solution to the challenge. I'd say early on, Julie, you know, you and I went back and forth in circles with, you know, between us and the team about what the right technology solutions were. And this was at the very beginning of COVID, when everybody was scrambling for e-commerce solutions and trying to solve very similar logistical challenges of connecting, you know, retail POS platforms and online commerce websites like Squarespace and Weebly and Shopify, and trying to figure out how to get data in and out of them in useful ways to the team. We ultimately landed on a solution that was not perfect. That, you know, Julie would come to me with an ask, and inevitably, you know, often it would land on I don't think there's a reasonable solution to that challenge at this moment. So we need to either simplify on our end or create a solution on our end in terms of product or process. But we also use tools like Zapier. If you're ever working sort of in the back end of these technology and e-commerce platforms, Zapier is a great tool for connecting them and helping them talk to each other. So, you know, for instance, Zapier was the tool that we used to rapidly generate pick lists for our orders, because we would receive at our peak, it could be hundreds of orders in you know, a matter of days. And Julie's business is I've never worked in a business like Julie's, so it was a great learning for me that the business is so significantly seasonal with such intensity in the spring season that you need technology to work for you, but then you've got really just significant volume of orders to move through. And you know, one learning for us is that systems and processes and organization is critical to excelling if you're going to be navigating high volumes of orders. But Zapier was the solution that we used to extract pick lists from Weebly, which is, Square was what Julie's business runs its retail operation on, the Square POS platform. And so Zapier was the tool that we rigged up to pull the data into a mail merge in the Google suite, and ultimately batch print hundreds of pick lists every day so that the team could then be picking the orders rather than individually printing hundreds of orders every day. And then drivers would use tools like Routerific to think about efficiently planning routes for home delivery at the delivery peak.
And I think I don't want to get into too much of like the weeds and the details, but like the basic things like having the name, you know, in big bold letters at the top of the order, things like that would make the process of picking, you know, sometimes 300 orders in a morning so much faster. And there, like FM is saying, there was no perfect solution. So he had to create those using these these extensions. And that was so key to what made it work. And when he says we have a highly seasonal business, we make something like 80 to 85% of our income in 3 weeks for the whole year. I mean, it is an insane cycle for us. So to be figuring out a new way to do it, like in real time, really, really incredibly relied on these solutions to make it as efficient as possible. It still wasn't great. I mean, if I had to redo it over again, I would, want to reinvent some kind of custom software if I knew this was the only way to do business. But it worked well enough. And yeah, Bay had a question that we were really strict with sort of the parameters for ordering. We didn't make any exceptions for anyone. We just said the order has to be in by midnight and you have to pick it up between noon and 5 the next day. And that was the only way we could make it work because of our physical space. We had limited space to hold all those orders, and plants have to be watered and seeds can't get wet. And like having both things in one box is problematic for very long. So we really were strict with our customers, and they went with it. They were so grateful to be able to get plants that it worked in the end. It's a wild thing.
The other thing that I think was interesting is that, Julia, and I'd be curious to get your reflections on this, that managing an e-commerce business, which is essentially what we were doing, what in many ways required different methods of production planning and particularly inventory planning that your business has been, fluent and executing for the past decade, right? Like those systems of sort of pulling things up from old greenhouses and not necessarily having exact numbers and exact accounting at any given time don't work when you're selling discrete units at such high volume, and there's high risk of running out of items. That was a real challenge for us.
Yeah, I mean, things would go in the online store as inventory and be sold out really quickly, and people were constantly, telling us they couldn't find the plant they wanted. They were waiting to order, one type of tomato because they were waiting for like a pepper to be available. And then by the time the pepper was available, that tomato was gone. It was just all these stories constantly. We were doing our best, but it was impossible to get it just right, to have everybody's favorite plants at once in the online store. It was just our inventory was such a moving target, and we're all learning how to do this. And I think we pulled it off pretty well, but it was a challenge. I was having a little PTSD when we were putting these slides together, remembering what that all felt like.
Really, do you have any reflections to share on thinking about like what simplifications might look like as we think forward to 2021 on this front around, like last year we listed 3 or 4 types of rosemary at one time and tried to maintain those separate inventory slots online. How are you thinking about that for this year?
I think because this year we'll be doing a hybrid where a certain limited amount of people can shop in person, we're going to simplify the online store a bit more. So maybe instead of, I don't know, the rosemary is not a good example. Geraniums, for example, we grow, 48 types of geraniums, 50 types of geraniums. We're just going to say red geranium, pink geranium. We're not going to say candy, fantasy, kiss, pink geranium, and calliope medium red geranium. We're just going to say you pick your color, we'll choose what variety it is. So, for people who are real plant people who care about variety names, that's a struggle, and I don't think last year when they didn't have the option to shop in person, if we had taken away like the ability to choose individual varieties, I think that would have been hard for people. So we simplified in other ways, which we'll get into, but we made bundles and, other things that, we simplified that. And then, I think, some of the simplification that we'll do this year is because of that the in-person shopping will be allowed to balance that out.
Gotcha. So I think one of the things that we learned early on and that we really emphasized was that clear communication is absolutely crucial to success in this space. And I think it's normally required of successful online businesses and, online retail. But particularly in the context of COVID, if we can sort of think back to the degree of uncertainty that we were living with in that moment in sort of March and April of last year, we were really intently focused on how can we communicate clearly how we're managing our retail experience, how people can engage with our business and shop with us successfully at every touch point. So, Julie has this really wonderful newsletter and this, a great list of highly engaged folks in that audience. But then she also had cultivated, social media communities in the form of Facebook and Instagram in particular, where, she had a different, often a different group of her audience was engaging with the brand there. And so we were really focused on building consistency of messaging, but making it as easy as possible for folks to understand how we were operating and how they could shop with Red Wagon. It wasn't just about enabling sort of them to sort of move their dollars towards our business. There's a degree to which it was also about, the better we could do at communicating who and how we were in this particular moment as a business, the less ad hoc communication we had flying at us from customers. So there was a really significant, I think, learning curve for us around just the amount of hand holding and customer service required of an online business where people are moving themselves through sort of the purchase journey and through checkout. I think for a variety of reasons, imperfections in the technology, challenges with inventory processes, some of our demographic sort of related challenges. There was a lot of communication that had to happen sort of back and forth with customers. So we spent a lot of time building out FAQs, interrupters that would pop up on the website to try to really clearly explain to people in in plain speak exactly what to do and how to do it. Because ultimately what we learned, and we'll share a little bit more about this later, is that particularly in this moment, people just needed to be told what to do and they were willing to be told what to do. At least our customers were really amenable to the solutions that we were proposing. We just had to be really clear and concise about what we were doing and how we were doing it. And Michelle asked a question about sort of demographics across our different communication channels. And I think absolutely we were actually just looking at this earlier today, that I think that they're on average, like the mean age difference between our Instagram audience and our newsletter audience is potentially up to 20 years of sort of average age difference between those two audiences. So that may be unique to Julie's business in particular, but we do see like a really significant demographic difference. So when we think about the Venn diagrams and of our audiences, there's not as much overlap between those two channels as we might expect there to be. So It was crucial for us to communicate clearly in all of those places.
And I think one thing that really helped that you did, FM, was you always looked at things through the customer's perspective, and if I would get frustrated at some process, you were always like really helpful of bringing it back. How does this look through the customer's eyes? How can we make this easy for them? And that was so key. And it's so easy to get frustrated in these moments when things aren't going our way, but just to remember, like, make it easy for them, make it easy for them. Or clear, maybe not easy, but clear.
I'm a data nerd, and so I really appreciate that, what digital does for us when it comes to understanding our products and our portfolio and revenue sources. So, even Square as a relatively basic sort of with a relatively basic e-commerce functionality bolted onto it provides some, the ability to generate some useful insights and understanding of products and product categories. And I think, Julie, for instance, this year, was the first year that we were selling all of our items discretely from an inventory rather than selling in broad categories like this is an annual at $4.99. We were listing all of the items individually in our store online, and so we got sort of a new level of detail as it related to product category volume, when it was moving, average price points, varietal. Like I think we were able to start to shift from some anecdotally, proven anecdotal information about portfolio blend and product movement to a much more sort of data-driven understanding of how our customers were interacting with our products and our product portfolio, because it was backed up by the power of a website, of an e-commerce website and Square.
Yeah, I mean, we grow 1,400 varieties of plants, which is insane. And the fact that we got, I don't know, maybe not 1,400, we probably got well over 800 varieties by name into that inventory system, and we're able to track the sales by variety, was really something else. I learned a ton from that, because before, like FM said, it was just by price point. So it was either a $4.99 or a whatever, $6.99 edible or not, because of taxes. Those were the only categories we had in our POS.
Mm-hmm.
And the only other information we ever tracked by variety was our production. So we knew how much we were producing of each variety, but we never tracked the actual sale of that variety and whether it went wholesale or retail. That just happened, physically. It never happened at the data level until this year.
And I think Julie's product portfolio is also relatively unique to have 1,400 plus unique products to have to manage from an inventory perspective and an e-commerce perspective is a unique challenge. So depending on the business and the product portfolio that you're navigating, you might only have one product or service that you're trying to sort of retail online, to shift to online, or a much smaller portfolio. There were really significant challenges with trying. It was sort of like running a little mini Amazon plant greenhouse, warehouse, fulfillment center out of Hinesburg, to be suddenly navigating that, managing that many SKUs through the platform. And similarly, like we're able to start to build connections and attributions between sort of discrete behaviors that Julie could engage in one of her communication platforms, and then connect those all the way through to actual sales, which is previously there would have been a few steps in between sort of an action taken on social media or a newsletter, Julie, and then the actual sale. Whereas you and I would plan, a tomato newsletter is going to go out, and then you would see the direct results being driven by the audience, both like receiving that newsletter and then clicking through the links. And so we also, I think, got better at building those newsletters in a way that were more concise and focused on the types of action that we wanted people to take. Julie is a really beautiful narrative writer. And so early on, there was a lot of coaching around bulleted lists and calls to action, and marrying sort of my rote sort of salesy marketing approach to the beautiful narrative driven approach that Julie is so good at and that her audience loves. But trying to find that middle ground, because a lot of what this was because of the business we were in, Julie, I felt like for us, it was about funneling the demand productively. It was less about trying to generate demand. We were really, it felt like crushed for that period of time and so we were just in the right place as it related to people's need to sort of feel more secure around food production and growing their own food at home, and people were homebound at that point. So I think these platforms, these communication channels, and our ability to influence and plan for when we would be driving volume through the store was less about like some of the mechanics that you typically think about with e-com, about like generating revenue, and it was more about like how to align the revenue, how to align these peaks and these ebbs to to meet our operational needs internally. So we're not going to send that newsletter on this day because that's a busy day no matter what. We're going to bump it over to this side so that we're pushing, volume into an off-peak time.
Yeah, our peak sales, instead of being like a record breaker on a weekend like we'd normally have, I think our record breaking day was like on a Tuesday or a Wednesday or something. So people's behavior really did change. Yeah. And I think I made FM be in charge of all the May newsletters because they really had to be like focused, directive, links to products for sale. And I hate sounding like a salesperson, but people needed that kind of direction. People needed like to know exactly, okay, do this now, click here, buy this, get in your car, come pick it up then. And so that was super helpful to just, the tone had to change.
We're connecting people to the things they wanted and needed.
Yeah, we sent out this survey and got back just like really beautiful comments, and people, were for the most part really, really willing to do whatever we said was safe. And many people, came shopping with us because of curbside and that we really cared about keeping them safe.
Chadwick asked if we tried to sell via Instagram shop, and the answer is that we didn't this year. And I think there were sort of probably two driving reasons why we didn't. One is it was a newer platform sort of emerging this year, and we were really focused on just sort of surviving the crush of April and May. I think the other reason is that our inventory, our portfolio was so extensive in terms of having, let's say, 600 or more products live in the database at any given time, that there was a real need for some of the robust merchandising and category merchandising and sort of navigational structures that a full e-commerce website provides. So typically, Instagram might not, at that point at least, didn't seem to allow like lots of structured navigation or easy integration with the retail platform that we were already working in. So we didn't choose to explore it at that point.
Yeah, we're really hanging on with just like pick one way to do it and stick to it. There again, because it's such a fast, quick season for us, there's just not time to switch gears. And Cheryl had a question about the data. Does the data show us sort of a discrepancy between like what we want to do and what customers want? And it's too early, I think, to tell that. And I don't know, Cheryl, if I'm understanding your question quite correctly, but because we have to plan, a year ahead what we're going to be growing, we can't really shift gears because we're not, placing an order for something and having it come in if a customer wants something different. But I didn't notice anything in the data that made me want to shift what we're growing. I mean, we shifted to more edible plants, which is always sort of where my heart lies. And that does seem to be like where the consumer demand is. And that's what the data is showing. So there wasn't a discrepancy that I'm aware of at this point.
One example, maybe, and this is more sort of looking forward, is that I think we would have been, well, I don't know, Julie, where your heart was at about 2021 and what you would have preferred to do in terms of the operating model, but we'll share in a minute. But our customers very clearly expressed that they wanted us to be open for in-person shopping. And I think there was always some of that pull. One of the things that we both learned from the sort of quantitative survey and their qualitative responses is that there's this like real like deep sort of almost like spiritual nature of around the ritual and seasonality of sort of like going to the garden center and like the physical act of sort of browsing and picking your own plants, almost like, in my mind, it's similar to like the act of like picking your own produce and the disconnect that some people have with like grocery shopping services and grocery delivery. Like I think there is, Cheryl, a little bit of that was a learning for us that really like emphasized the importance of something that we probably knew it intuitively that it was really important, but then the data reinforced it and really sort of pushed us in a particular direction.
That's true. Yeah. Yeah. We did build another greenhouse too, to accommodate like this, you know, to be able to bring back the ornamental plants and accommodate this higher volume of veggies. We had to build another greenhouse. So I guess we did change that way too.
You know, and the other thing that's interesting about this experience for us from a learning perspective is that e-commerce became a way for us to extend the ways in which our business can, you know, people can engage with our business. This is a very specific example of when you stand up a website, people can interact with your business 24 hours a day and seven days a week. And those are not the hours that we keep at Red Wagon plants during the typical year. But even beyond, like as we moved into late season, it also gave Julie and the team an opportunity to sort of keep the store open, if you will, and give people sort of an opportunity to engage with the business in seasons in which, like, typically the retail operation wouldn't be open any longer.
Yeah, I didn't know there was this thing at the end of the year where people buy gifts and stuff for the holidays, like, because we've always been closed, and we were able to take advantage of that for the first time this year. And so that was interesting. I was like, oh, it doesn't all have to happen in 3 weeks in May, you know? So those types of things have been a real eye opener for me. I'm a slow learner, so I had to experience it to realize that retail sales happen around the holidays.
On the flip side, this also comes with sort of customers' expectations that if the store is always open, right? The store is always open and there's somebody always there on the other side of it. And people, you know, it can become challenging to maintain boundaries, but it emphasizes the need to sort of build the internal systems and processes to support the customer experience. If they are able to shop 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, how are we supporting them through that journey? And how are we supporting ourselves in that new operating model as well?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this boy, turning into an e-commerce store, really, like, we had to set up like little photo booths and do photo sessions like every single day for all those 1,400 varieties. I mean, it was such a huge amount of work. We didn't have customers coming through, so we weren't taking care of customers, but we were constantly taking photos of customers and doing inventory as fast as we possibly could. On the right is photos of our value-added products. FM set us up with a professional photographer, Carrie Nershi, who did a beautiful job taking photos of our value-added herb products. We make herb salts and herb vinegars. And again, that opened up this whole new level of opportunity for us, because all of a sudden we knew how to sell things online. We sold so many more of our herb products because we knew how to do it. So even though those sales come a little bit after, you know, plant season, they don't really start till July or in August. Just having that knowledge and knowing how to merchandise things really was a game changer for us. And that's absolutely one of the takeaway lessons, you know, of having to switch to e-commerce that'll benefit our business in the future. But all these little things, like the angle, you know, that you take the photo of that plant, you know, that will sell that plant. And someone looking really happy holding a hanging basket, you know, all these. And this is Lily, who's our retail manager in the photo, and she couldn't be here today. Let's just say that we wanted her to be here with us, but she couldn't be here. And anyhow, the visual merchandising, the digital merchandising was a huge steep learning curve. But it also allowed us to sell things we never sell normally. We usually sell, you know, we have these professional grade, like, watering wands, you know, that we love for our own use. And I always put a few out to sell to try to convince customers, like, this will change your life if you have, like, the right watering tools. And when we have them in as a physical object in a greenhouse that's open to the public, people walk right by them. They don't notice them. But when they're on a screen as an item with a nice photograph and a nice written description that they have time to read and absorb, they buy them. And we sold, I don't know, 140 of these things that in the past, maybe I would have sold 2, or 3. So it was really an incredible learning experience to know like that, how that behavior is different and how the merchandising shapes that behavior.
And I think the other thing is that energy that was invested in sort of creating these photo assets for the website, then that all became collateral that could be pushed out via the newsletter and via social media. So it wasn't sort of a one-time investment. We were able to, give everything legs and extend the use of those of that investment of that time and energy to then share on these other very visual platforms like folks' emails and Instagram. And I think we really saw a lot of engagement and growth this year in both of those areas as well because of that investment.
Mm-hmm. And Sarah's asking if we have any tips for organizing photos. I'm going to say no, I don't have any tips. I really wish I did. I search by date, I make albums on the fly. Like I wish I had some good answers for that.
I've never worked in a business where this hasn't been a challenge, Sarah. And I'm just thinking like at Vermont Creamery, I had, one of my team members who just, any photo I needed, I could sort of vaguely describe it. And she knew which folder it was, sort of buried away in. And this year we used, we were all using iPhones to take the photos. So there weren't fancy cameras, iPhones are fancy cameras, I guess, but nothing professional grade being used. And then we were sharing photos using the shared album feature from the Photos app on the iPhone, which was sort of connecting to laptops and things like that. So it at least made sharing between multiple folks relatively seamless. Often, Julie would be snapping at the greenhouse or Lily would, and I would be at home working on the website. And so it made that technology really enabled us to be working sort of concurrently from different places and helped us. But I don't have a great solution for you on that front.
Yeah. You're not alone. So some of the unique opportunities that evolved, and again, this was a lot of this was with FM's help. And we went back and forth on, bundles only or single varieties and bundles or single varieties only. And we ended up somewhere in the middle, but we bundled a lot of plants. So it was like these collections, like on the left is this meadow perennial garden collection. And so it was like a wagon load that people could buy, or this collection of basils in the middle, or this like shade garden annual foliage collection. And it was really fun for customers who didn't have like someone holding their hand while they shopped, and to help pick out plants for customers who don't know plant by variety names and who just wants plants that go well together. I would say that was a huge success. It also made our lives a lot easier as we were picking orders, because we could make 24 collections at a time, put 24 in the inventory. And as they started to, sell out, make another 24 and just re-up the number. And it was just like a way to have steady inventory. And then we were able to tell people like, well, these are Julie's favorite, hot weather crops. Like, just if you don't see your favorite tomato come up at the same exact time as your favorite pepper, why don't you try this bundle of Julie's favorites? It was like a way to encourage people to try something new. Or Sophie made a beautiful like medicinal herb collections, and it turned people on to all these plants they never would have known. And then we followed up with blog posts and social media posts about those items. We followed up in the fall with like things you can make with the medicinal herbs, or how to can or process the tomatoes that you got in Julie's, favorite hot crop collection. So there was a lot of like, we were able to give some of that customer support in other ways, and creating these bundles was one way to do that. And FM gets all the credit for this as a concept and an idea. And I think I might have been fighting you a bit, FM, on this, but it really worked well. It was a great way to sell a lot of plants at once.
You did fight tooth and nail on that one. But what I was going to say about the bundles was that they were also where we started way back in April when we first we did an early, we sort of dipped our toe in the water, so to speak, and rather than trying to merchandise and fulfill a whole bunch of individual cold weather crops, we just focused on a cold weather herb bundle and a cold weather veggie bundle. And that was sort of our opportunity to say, well, let's just focus on the process of how we're managing orders coming through our system. We're only going to really be offering 2 products, which were those 2 bundles. And that allowed us to start to work out some of the challenges that we were experiencing in real time. I think that at the end of the day, you never know until the whole thing goes live. And so we wanted to sort of slowly turn the spigot on that. And to Julie's point earlier, we to some extent we're sort of flattening our own revenue curve by offering products earlier than we typically would, but also there was extreme demand much earlier in the season.
And it was a warm spring too. We wouldn't have been able to do that in other years. But yeah, those bundles were so prolific, and we got a lot of feedback like later in the summer, like, I'm getting these huge cabbages. I've never grown cabbage well before, because people might plant it when it's too hot and then they don't have good luck with it. So they were planting things at the right time, and that was a really helpful sort of learning lesson for a lot of our customers. And then these shots are of like later in the season, like I was mentioning the holiday sales, and we were able to sell things like bulk culinary herbs directly to our customers, which we've never done before. And our fulfillment center shrunk down to just like where we pack herbs, to a little table in a small room when the weather got cold, and the sales were a lot slower, but still it was more sales than we've ever had as, retail sales that time of year. And we were able to sell, all kinds of fun things like these wreath kits. People were making herb wreaths like mad all fall. And then we shipped salts and vinegars. We'd never shipped a single thing before. As a business owner, it's been like a lifelong, adult-long dream to have a shippable, shelf-stable product. And this year, it happened. We finally started shipping salts and vinegars, and that was a great feeling too. And again, it's like that e-commerce mindset is what helped make that happen.
So we'll switch gears a little bit here. So in January, Julie came to me and said, we have to make a decision. Well, we had known we needed to make a decision about what we were going to do this year for some time, and we just were putting it off for a variety of reasons. But we decided to poll the audience, and we administered a survey via, just a simple survey via Google Forms, and sent it out via Julie's newsletter. So, the nice thing about a newsletter, highly recommend that you start to build a newsletter audience if you aren't doing that with your business right now. Even if you're not going to use it, go ahead and start building it. Is that we had a sort of a captive audience, and these were our most ardent, highly engaged followers and sort of brand audience members. We got about 440 responses from customers, and so we wanted to share just a few results. Specifically, we use this as an opportunity to understand how they shopped last year in relevant categories. So sort of the spaces that we play as a purveyor of seeds, of vegetable starts, of gardening related merchandise and soil and tools. And then so how did they shop last year? How do they sort of, as best they can, predict how would they like to shop this year? And then we asked them all to answer a few very simple demographic questions so we could understand who we were hearing from in the survey tool. So, one of the results that is not necessarily surprising, but something that was a good reminder for us, sort of a gut check, if you will, is that when we asked respondents about how they shopped last year, over half of our respondents, or right about half of our respondents, are shopping, use multiple methods to shop last year for garden supplies and for plants, and so this is a biased sample, of course, because these are our shoppers. We know that they were shopping with us, or at least they've subscribed to our newsletter, so they're very likely shopping with us. But this was to help us level set and understand how they were shopping last year. And because this was a choose all that apply, we could see that, for instance, only 15% of the shoppers that responded last year only shopped in person. So 85% of our shoppers last year indicated that they were engaging in some form of online shopping, whether it be with fulfillment through curbside pickup or online curbside pickup or home delivery. We also asked, we wanted to understand, did our decision last year to operate via only curbside and curbside and home delivery, did the lack of in-person shopping impact the sort of where they took their dollars last year? And according to the responses, that yes, indeed, about a third of the respondents said that they did in fact shop someplace else. And we chose to sort of keep this survey very brief and high level, and so we didn't dig into sort of understand how much of the business went elsewhere, for what categories, for what types of products did they just choose to take those dollars elsewhere. But we can see and acknowledge that there was, at least in terms of dollars and cents, some measurable adverse impact to the revenue that we were able to bring in last year as a business. At the same time, 2/3 of those respondents indicated that it did not adversely affect their decision to shop with Red Wagon last year. And as we think about how they're feeling for this year, over 2/3 of our respondents, so sort of the pie has now flipped, so to speak, are expressing that their preferred method of shopping this year will be in person, with only a third of our respondents asking for online shopping, preferring an online shopping to an in-person shopping experience. We need to consider many inputs as we engage in that decision-making process. Preference for in-person doesn't necessarily mean that they will not shop with us online if we were to decide to only go with shopping online. But it is pretty clear at this point that our shoppers have a strong sort of inclination that this is where their heads will be at in a couple months as it relates to shopping preferences. Julie, do you want to add anything about the decision-making process and sort of how we wrestled with that and how you talked to the team about that decision?
Yeah, I mean, I think if I had my way, I would just do it 100% curbside again, because I don't feel like the risk of COVID is any less. I feel like it's higher than it was last spring in terms of the numbers, at least right now, or a couple of weeks ago when we were working on this. But I think that would be a little bit tone deaf to what our customers want and what, people are doing now. People seem to be going to stores, no problem. And I think I'm a little bit more, COVID, I'm risk averse when it comes to COVID personally in my own life. So we are going to be open to the public 7 days a week, like normal. And we will be limiting the amount of cars that can come in. So we're going to try to encourage people to shop during the week, not just on weekends. We'll have some incentives for that. And if people show up and there's not a parking spot, then we ask them to come back later or to place an order online for next day pickup. I think we'll be disappointing a lot of people at times if the parking spots are all full. I think that it's going to be hard to juggle the little bit of online business that we have with the in-person retail, but we'll have to figure that out just in terms of the physical space. Like, where do we pack the orders? Where do we store the orders? Where are people picking up the orders? Because our parking lot's really small. It's a hard decision because we have even though it's a greenhouse business and a lot of it's outdoors and greenhouses are big and airy, we really pack the plants in, and our aisleways are pretty small, and people can be like shoulder to shoulder at times. It can be really, really crowded there. And so this has been a difficult decision. I sort of wished that the results were like, no, keep curbside. We love curbside. It's so convenient. But that's not what the results were. And I do want to, I've been polling our staff, and people are feeling safe, as long as people are wearing masks and we limit the amount of people at a time. So we'll see. I mean, it's a numbers thing too, because if we limit the cars too much, then we don't generate the sales that we need to generate too. And that was definitely, part of our thinking last year was curbside only, because that was the only way to handle the volume all at once. Like, we couldn't, a hybrid model just requires a lot more physical space and a lot more staffing. But that's what we're exploring now. So we're working on that plan. And one other thing that we're doing this year is that we're having one person who's like a dedicated sort of communications person who will answer all the emails, the voicemails, the social media, direct messages. It's definitely, that's been one of the huge lessons that we've learned, is like anything with e-commerce requires a huge amount of communication. And there were weeks and weeks last year where we just had to shut down the voicemail and just had to delete emails. We just couldn't keep up. It wasn't staff in place to keep up.
So as we think about some of the lessons learned, I mean, we've shared a lot of things that we'll carry with us and will inform the way that we operate as a business this year and moving forward. But if it isn't clear, I think there's good energy within the Red Wagon team right now around sort of the potential that e-commerce can hold for the business in the long term. And it doesn't mean that we're going to be retailing, all of our live plants via the website for into perpetuity, but it has given us the opportunity this year to sort of test and learn from some really great opportunities around online education and selling product kits related to online education, bundling products for sort of pre-season and late season sales. As Julie mentioned, the website is really what enabled her to start to ship products, shelf stable, shippable, non-perishable products, literally across the country. So it has sort of, I guess, forced that issue, sort of forced that learning for us about the expansive potential that e-commerce presents us as a business that's rooted on a farm in Hinesburg and is typically highly preferenced the in-person, the physical retail. Some form of all of this will carry forward and help us continue to explore that opportunity in the future.
Yeah. And the amount of excitement there is for our staff around these new opportunities, because they get, we can keep them on longer in the season or even year round if they can, generate ways to pay for themselves basically and earn their keep. And they're really excited to do that. And we're doing all kinds of new things because of both the video education component, like Zoom, allowing us to teach people how to make these, herb wreaths. It's so sweet, to see like families engaging over the computer with us, like making these beautiful things with our herbs, or Sophie making herbal teas and showing people how to do it and how to do it, from the start by planting the plants and going all the way into the fall with, making these products at home. And we're just super excited about these opportunities that have come up. And to tie like plants with an education module and follow up with coaching and with newsletters that are tailored to like that plant collection that that person bought, or that theme of that type of gardening that that person purchased. Like, for example, we're going to have something around, growing for the pantry, whether it's your own or a food pantry that you want to donate to. So we'll set people up with, a kit that has squashes and seeds for root crops and potato seed, and then they can, we'll teach them how to store it, or what food shelves are accepting those types of vegetables for their clients. So it'll be fun to, cater all these new ways of selling plants and education components together. No, we won't have time for breakout sessions. Yeah. So do we have more slides, or should we open it up to sort of, oh yeah, resources is our
Just
last.
a quick resources slide. And I was just trying to think through everybody that was in the audience. And I think we've got good representation on this slide, but I know that it's impossible to capture it all. So this past year, although no amount of support, could reasonably have been enough for the challenge that we all face as small businesses in Vermont. I was thoroughly just energized and invigorated to see the ways in which people did step up and organizations did step up to support our small farms and our small producers in Vermont. And these are just a few of the names that are probably like the names that are that we already know, and there's so many more other organizations in Vermont and outside of Vermont that are doing meaningful work to support the businesses that you all represent, businesses like Julie's. And my plea would be that to, as best you can, to take advantage of those resources out there, because there's lots of them, and often they are free or very low cost, and can really do I think a lot of good for our small businesses in Vermont.
Yeah, and I see in the audience we do have a lot of service providers. So if you want to, I know you already introduced yourselves, but if there's anything really specific that you want to mention, this could be a great place. Or if you've accessed some resources yourself as a farmer, please feel free to share. Should we open it up for more discussion?
Sure. I see a hand raised. I'm gonna feel free to unmute yourself. I can't see your name in my current view. I apologize.
Ellen. I see Ellen. Is that who you see?
Yeah, that's who I am. Hey,
Hi, Ellen.
I can't applaud you guys enough. I mean, you just really, at the same time as being rooted, you were like willing to shift. Let me go here, let me go there, but not too much, which I thought was really the key. Don't start something that you can't do during COVID. You know what I mean? So good on you. We actually are an organization, and we started raised bed gardening for our community, and we're kind of offering them at a sliding fee scale for people dealing with food insecurity up to folks who could afford to help another family out. We actually founded during COVID and founded really late, so we were always like really behind, and I was just like, okay, this is what COVID is. It's this kind of resiliency, and people were like, kind of like complaining. And I was always like, come on, guys, like this is just in the moment. So we didn't really get that chance to think. And I'm just wondering if you have any advice, like how we can kind of do our plan after already existing. Do you know what I mean? Like how do you kind of take a step back and look at what you had to do in a real quick crisis kind of moment?
That's a great question. I mean, we didn't do a lot of reflecting in the moment.
That's for damn sure.
We certainly didn't either. One thing that we did as a team was that we came together at the end of the season for an all-day sort of retreat, and spent the day reflecting on how things went as an organization, where I think both attempting to recognize the tremendous work that had just been done and all of the great accomplishments that the team had contributed to, and then also thinking as as productively as we could about opportunities for continued improvement in the future. How can we continue to add the type of value that we want to as a business? And that's part of potentially a normal team's, annual planning process. But I feel like this year it felt particularly meaningful to come together in that moment and sort of quietly reflect for a day, and to be able to carve out time felt like a nice change of pace.
Yeah, and we take a lot of notes during those meetings, during those retreats, and then we basically turn those notes into action steps, and I would recommend that with all your interested parties, with your gardeners or anyone you're serving. Like, how can you have their input shape how you do things, and then balance it with what makes sense for you and what your goals are, and like our goals are still the same: to keep our team safe and to have as many gardens flourish as possible in our community, and those goals haven't changed, but how we get there has changed because of this hybrid model we're taking this year, we're doing this year. But to just have like a listening session and really take that into account, I think is really key.
One thing you said, Ellen, earlier in your question was around sort of sort of understanding what your core is, and not, particularly in this moment, not straying too far from your core as a business. Like, how do you best add value? And, sort of what is your mission and what are your values? And I have to hand it to Julie, is that like she was onboarding me to her business in this moment of crisis, and was really grounded in who Red Wagon, who we are as a business and what our values are and how we add value. And so she was really helpful, for me. And I think it just reaffirmed that like there were moments where I was full of ideas, and they were probably not bad ideas in some other moment, but in that moment it was not the right idea for the sort of the context that we were in at that time. So it was a really good opportunity for us to sort of reaffirm, like, what's that our core? How do we get back to like the core of what we do, and really like simplify to deliver the most impact to our community in this moment?
Yeah. Does that answer your question, Ellen? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, a lot of value. Thank you.
Okay. Megan had a question about staff communication. And so during COVID, I did a lot of group emails. We did a lot of group emails. We're not super sophisticated. Like, I don't know what Slack is. I guess that's one thing people use. I don't know how to use that. That's okay though. So we do group emails, occasionally group texts. We have a little staff newsletter during peak season when there's 20 or more of us. I send out sort of a breezy little updates. Here's what's new. Here's what's coming down the line. Keep an eye out for this in the newsletter. Let me know any questions you're having from customers that you can't answer. So we send out a little newsletter like that to staff. We treat staff kind of like customers in a way, like working with your staff is the same as customer service. We try to really have that as an ethic. Like, we treat each other like we would treat customers. And we also use Trello. So this winter, we set up Trello boards. It's an app. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's FM. Other people have recommended it, and then FM literally held my hand and walked me through it, so I would learn how to use it. And now our whole staff adores it. So I used to have I like Excel spreadsheets. I used to have these big Excel spreadsheets of all the projects we're doing, who's the contact person, and when's the due date, and any notes. And now it's in these easier to sort of read boards, and people have been really great about taking on their winter projects and completing them and taking ownership of them. And during peak season, we don't use anything like that during peak season, just the emails and texting and staff meetings with core staff once a week. So a team of 4 of us who are the core kind of managers. And we have staff lunch. So we eat lunch together. Even during COVID, we would just sit really far apart, and a lot of information gets communicated that way. So any other questions about the topic or staffing or communication. I think we're getting close to time. And I want to just say, like, I know not everyone is lucky enough to have someone like FM, you know, helping them out. And I'm incredibly grateful. And like, it is a pretty unique situation, but I know a lot of farmers often don't want to, you know, spend money on things that aren't super tangible, or they can't afford to initially, which I completely understand. And I, you know, 10 years ago, I wouldn't have been able to put resources into this level of help. But it really does pay off. And I think it's an investment that's absolutely 100% worthwhile. And I really encourage people to seek out help wherever they can, however they can. And there are lots of resources out there to help pay for consultants too. So Intervale Center and NOFA can really like hook up farmers with resources to help pay for consultants. And I have taken advantage of those resources all of my farming life. I have done the farm viability program twice. I've worked with the Intervale lots and lots of times. And those are really fantastic resources. I could never be where I am without having used those resources. Yeah, so thank you, everyone. Thank you, FM. Thank you, Bay. Thank you, NOFA.
Thank you all. Thank you, NOFA.
That was great. What a great presentation. So much detail, you guys, and so much great on-hands information. And I love the final picture you have here, which is amazing. I also want to know if FM or Julie, if you could drop maybe a link to the Trello board. What was it? The Trello?
Trello, yeah.
Yeah, maybe a link for folks that want to follow up. And I've never heard of it actually, but it sounds really fascinating. So again, thank you so much. I really appreciated listening and hearing about it. And for folks, thanks for all the kudos. Make sure you guys read through those and take in all that support. And there's going to be a survey heading, let's see, there it is. Oh, that's the talent, great. Bill's just dropped in a survey of folks that were attending the workshop could go through there and give us your feedback. That would be wonderful. A link to the evaluation. And I guess that's it. I just, again, wanted to say thank you, and follow-up recording, if you did have to leave early, will come out on Friday, and make sure you check out the other workshops that are happening all week and beyond for the next month. We actually have 4 more minutes if anybody, you know, actually I'm going to jump in since we do have 4 minutes. I'd hate to lose you so quickly. And one thing that I'm just going to say, one thing that I really took away was, Julie, how you and both of you work to really create positions so you weren't doing it all. Because I think it's kind of the habit as farmers that we just try and are the people that do everything, you know, have have that one cap and just throw everything in there and go nuts. And I was really impressed how you started divvying out. And then you said now you're getting somebody to kind of keep in touch with that social media piece and all that. And that's a really great take-home piece, I think, to remember that as we kind of do these hybrids, that we can't, probably one person cannot manage a total hybrid situation like that. It would take more support.
Mm-hmm. We're hiring for a social media person if anyone wants that job.
There you go.
That's been a hard one to let go of, but I'm ready.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I want to shout out to Cheryl Herrick. Your photo's right below mine in the grid. Cheryl was the person who first taught me how to write a blog post. And I think, no, really, like this was so long ago, and I wouldn't have known how any of that stuff, I was so scared. And you had a great blog. And yeah, so you were the start of a lot of this marketing stuff, Cheryl.
Great. Well, thanks so much, folks. I guess we'll let you all go, and look forward to seeing you at our next workshops coming up.
Thanks, Faye.
Thank you.